By the Carson Palmerless Cardinals, Blaine Gabbert sacked 7 times, threw 2 picks in the loss. Gabbert, whose record as a starter is 9-31, is now tied for the second worst record through a quarterback's first 40 career starts among those to debut since 1970. Here's Chip Kelly.
I don't think tonight we're going to talk about that. You know, I mean, we're going to go and look at everything. We've got a couple of days off here, you know, in terms of getting ready for Buffalo, and then, you know, we'll assess the film and we'll move from there. But we're not talking about who's playing here or whatever in a game that's 10 days from now. So, and I understand you have to ask the question. I understand that. So, but right now, that's not, you know, not a conversation right now.
All right, so Chip keeping it close to the vest, not saying if the team will make a move just yet, with his team at only 1-4 this season. How much time, Stephen A., should Chip Kelly have in the NFL?
Well, first of all, it wouldn't bother me if he was fired before this season finished. Now, I know that would be a bit extreme, but understand why I'm saying that. I'm not saying that because of the their 1-4 record at this particular moment in time. I'm saying it because I never thought he should have had the job in the first place. After the job that he did in Philadelphia, there's no way on earth that he should have gotten fired in the penultimate game of last year's regular season, and 3 weeks later, the man ends up with a deal that gives him still remains him as a head coach in the NFL with a $6 million a year contract. I'd also like to say that Trent Baalke needs to be fired quicker than him. And the reason I say that is because Trent Baalke has ruined this franchise as far as I'm concerned. Let's take into account the fact that in 2011, Jim Harbaugh comes on board. They are 13-3 his first year. The next year, they're 11-4-1. They go to the, they're in the NFC Championship game. They go 12-4 the following year. They go to the Super Bowl and lose to the Baltimore Ravens because I ran out of time. Trent Baalke and Ned York get in the way of Jim Harbaugh. Supposedly, they can't deal with him. They ignore the fan base. They ignore the productivity of the franchise. They ignore the productivity of the team because of their own selfish feelings. They ultimately forced Jim Harbaugh out of there because they ruined the next season, which ended up being 8-8, by the way. And so then you go the route of Jim Tom Sula. None of us have ever heard from him, linebacker coach, ultimately, got the head coach job, only ended up with 5 wins that season. Smart enough to get him out of there, and what do? You go the route of Chip Kelly. Chip Kelly, mind you, that had the same Philadelphia Eagles squad, essentially, that exists right now with Doug Peterson, except their offense was prolifically faster, running plays every 23 seconds, running the defense into the ground, giving them no consideration whatsoever. Doug Peterson and Jim Schwartz changed that. Peterson, because of what he has the offense doing. Jim Schwartz, because he has a defense with fresh legs, and he actually prioritizes stopping the opposing offense. And look at the Philadelphia Eagles right now. Yet in San Francisco, the same old Chip Kelly that was in Philadelphia is the same Chip Kelly that's in San Francisco. Offense looking a bit sporadic, but has its good moments, has potential, but at the same time trying to play at a faster pace, doing it at the expense of a defense, and as a result, ultimately not winning football games. So that may not be Chip Kelly's fault per se. It's more Trent Baalke's fault for hiring him. Chip Kelly has given us every indication, based on the evidence, that this man needs to be back in college. He doesn't need to be coaching a professional franchise because he doesn't take into account conventional wisdom and conventional football and how that works for professional grown men in the National Football League. They need to clean house as far as I'm concerned. I'm not saying that Chip Kelly needs to go because it's all his fault. I'm saying he should not have been there because Trent Baalke shouldn't have been in a position to hire him. He should be gone for sabotaging Jim Harbaugh. Plain and simple. And the evidence proves it because the 49ers stink. And it has everything to do with Trent Baalke.
Sure. And by the way fans feel about GMs, basically, or executives generally, unless you're a brilliant, brilliant executive, is you can work until you expire. Fans really don't care. Like, oh, this guy's giving me a headache. Is he productive? Good. Then who cares about your headache? Go away. And when a GM who hasn't shown to be as brilliant as the coach and a coach don't get along, and the coach who's a brilliant coach leaves, fine, blame the GM. I'm all for that. But as it pertains to Chip Kelly, it's no great mystery why people are down on Chip Kelly in terms of the football X's and O's and everything. You have more players in college, so you can, a guy is tired, fresh legs, and on the defense, whatever, you can, college players more likely to sacrifice in ways without thinking about their long-term future as a professional NFL player. It's easier to get them to do things that aren't in their best interest. So it's not a mystery why people feel like Chip Kelly, that might work in college. It's not going to work in the pros. Chip Kelly apparently is extremely stubborn and maybe slower to learn this than others. Tom Coughlin, once upon a time, several times was about to lose his job because of his relationship with players. And stubborn old Tom Coughlin was like, uh-oh, my job? Okay, let's figure out a way to get this done. I'll make certain compromises without selling myself out. I think Chip Kelly can do the same thing. In terms of Colin Kaepernick and Blaine Gabbert, they have a game coming up 10 days from now, after a 10-day rest against the Buffalo Bills. I believe that's the drop-dead spot for Blaine Gabbert. They will likely lose that game at Buffalo against that defense. I wouldn't put Kaepernick in against that defense first week back anyway. You sacrifice Blaine Gabbert to that game, and at that point, Chip Kelly can say, okay, time to start Colin Kaepernick, who then would have another, week or altogether be 2-3 weeks to bulk up a little bit more. I think Chip still thinks he needs to get a little bigger and stronger. And then you start him at home against the Tampa Bay Bucks. If at that point, when you look at the Niners' schedule versus they get New Orleans at San Francisco, terrible defense. They'll lose to Arizona, they lose to New England. Then they go to Miami, it's winnable. Go to Chicago, winnable. New York Jets at home, winnable if you got a better quarterback. At Los Angeles, we'll see what the Rams are. But if they can win, Coach, 4 games with Colin Kaepernick, and Chip can go into the offseason with 5 wins and a better second half, I think Kaepernick and Chip can maybe save each other.
Well, I do know this. Last year when Chip was in Philadelphia, or the previous year, excuse me, when he was in Philadelphia, and we had seen what was going on with Colin when he got benched. I was the one to suggest early that, you know what, the perfect place would be to Philadelphia, because he would be in a system that he could really reveal his skill set, and he would have a coach that would really be excited about having this guy, because this was his Mariota in the National Football League before the young man came into the league, and is now with Tennessee. And I said, I just want to see what's going to look like. So, you know, you guys both make some great points. Look, Stephen A. makes great points about this organization. Historically, this organization, obviously with Mr. Bartola, you know, and the family and what they had accomplished with Steve Young and Joe Montana. Historically, we just got inducted to the Hall of Fame. I mean, we get all that, and they're not at that place anymore. I get it. And Coach Harbaugh came in and was terrific. And then we saw this, whatever it was, this mutual departing of whatever it may be. How it happened, don't know, don't want to get involved in that. But going forward, spinning it forward, I think if you're Coach Kelly, you have to play Kaepernick eventually, because this is the guy. Now, is he who he was 2 years ago? I don't know, but I'd like to see.
Yep.
Just as a fan, I want to just see this. If he had this guy at quarterback, now, he doesn't have a lot of weapons around him. They got a runner, which they need, if he can stay healthy. Don't really have a lot of perimeter players. But the quarterback alone in this system, when it's run right, is difficult now. If Kaepernick's right. And I'd like to just see it. I like to see, let me just see it for about 8 games, see what it looks like.
It's weird that they seem to be fighting themselves, like, oh, they brought in Chip Kelly. That must mean that they want to keep Kaepernick. Wait, now Kaepernick wants to leave? Oh, now Kaepernick's staying, but Chip Kelly don't want to play him? It seems like they need each other. And after they lose to the Bills with Gabbert on a 10 days rest, I can't imagine that at that point he doesn't start Cap.
You have to do something, because the credibility of the football team is all of a sudden looking at this situation and going, what are you doing, Coach? We got to give this guy a chance. When you lose the locker room as a head coach, you're done. You know, and this game is still about winning. This is not recreational football. This is professional football. And you have an obligation to win. And when you look at those players in that locker room, if you got a guy sitting over here, and he's your number 2 guy, by the way, he's 1 hit away from playing, and they're trying to figure this all out. You lost your best player, Navarro Bowman. He was keeping this locker room and this glue together. Well, he's still there, but he's not playing. So you got to do something. You got to fix this. And I think what he said in the press conference was very revealing when he said this. We're not talking about that right now.
Yeah, right now.
They're talking about it today.
Yes.
He didn't say that a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah,
So
they're talking
Gabbert's
about
the guy.
They're talking about it today. They're talking about it today.
I just hope Colin Kaepernick's healthy once they do put him in. Stephen A., did you want to jump in?
Nope.
Nope. You're all
I'm
good.
ready. Let's move on.
Because he had that dead shoulder or whatever.
No,
Make
yeah,
sure when he gets in that he's healthy, so he's in.
Stephen A. made great points, and I didn't need to go walk back that.
Yep.
What he said was truthful. It's right, spot on. You know, and I just think going forward
No,
now, where they're going to go. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Stephen A.
You know what I love, Coach, about what you just said? You didn't seem surprised at all at how truthful and prophetic I was, because you know that to be the case all the time. I like that, Coach. I like that.
Or he had to just highlight the fact that you actually made great points.
And I just found out that he was a professor. He's a doctor.
No, Herm, he's a doctor.
Right.
Did you hear it?
Stephen A. is always.
I didn't know.
Stephen A. is always truthful.
Excuse me.
Rarely right, but always
This
truthful.
guy right here, he's something else.
Whatever.
He's
But
the
I do
best.
like him. But
That's my man. He's the best. I
something
love
else.
him.
All right, Coach, have a great weekend. We'll see you on
Thank
the
you. Love
Blitz,
you
and
back,
hopefully
Coach.
you'll be with us next week.
All right. See you later.
Hold it.
Let me just say,
Hold
I can't
it.
hear
Hold
Stephen A.
it.
So this, I'm
Oh,
gonna
he's
hold the
saying
arguments.
hold it.
Hold it. You know good and damn well when I bring up Chip Kelly and Philadelphia, Will Cain, what I'm talking about. It ain't just football. I know he had a 26-21 record overall. Nobody's questioning his football acumen. But your ability to relate to and ingratiate yourself with players, the way he had alienated a bunch of dudes, which ultimately led to him getting fired because that, coupled with his lack of productivity that last particular season, got Jeffrey Lurie to not even wait for the final game of the year before firing him. He said, get the hell out of here now. Now, I worked in Philadelphia for 17 years, writing for the Philadelphia Inquirer. I know Jeffrey Lurie. He's class personified, and there's no way in hell that he would have made the decision to let this man go before the season was even finished, unless he was that divisive. That is why I said he had no business getting the San Francisco job. And you know that, Will.
I totally respect who you know in Philadelphia, your knowledge of the Philadelphia market, but I also know this, that innovators are also very often unwelcomed into their sphere, whether or not it's Steve Jobs or anyone that threatens the conventional wisdom of an industry. But that's how you succeed as well. That's how 7 seconds or less developed in Phoenix. That's how the Golden State Warriors figured out how to win. That's how Steve Jobs figured out how to innovate the technology market, and that makes people a little cold towards you. I'm not saying Chip Kelly is Steve Jobs, but I'm saying you don't know sometimes when innovation is coming because you're so resistant to it.
But there's 32 jobs in the NFL, Will Cain. There's 32 jobs. And the fact of the matter is that this dude, think about this, Will, and I'm going to ask you this question. I'm going to be serious. I'm just going to ask you this question, and I will respect your retort, because I'm not going to debate this. I'm not going to debate this part with you, but I'm asking for your perspective here. A man with his chronicled and reported history at a different location ends up getting an equal, if not better job 3 weeks after being fired. You have no problem with that? None?
Because
None?
I have pause. You say I have no problem. Would that give me pause? Because I would have to ask myself, and again, I'll say this, I respect your knowledge on the ground, whether or not this is truly a personal problem, a personality problem, or is it, which is often the case, just an instant reaction, an instant recoiling from anybody threatens the natural order of things,
The
way it's done, the status quo. That's why I'd have to ask
I want
myself.
to talk about his innovation for a second, because maybe that's right. When you're 10-6, they can't get rid of you. As soon as you go a little under 500, aha, it doesn't work. Get rid of him. Ridiculous. Fine. But he inherited an Andy Reid team. He rode largely those players to the 10-6 records. He then systematically got rid of those players, and then doing it his way went, immediately got worse results. Now, you can argue, hey, give him a couple years to institute his own culture, his own way of doing things. That could be a legitimate argument, but there are conventional reasons that people can point to why it doesn't work in the pros, even though it worked in college, that seem to make a lot of sense. And if you lose the locker room, if the locker room turns against you, even if a neutral observer would say, yeah, but the locker room was wrong, it doesn't matter. The fact that they turned against you makes them right. As a head coach, it's incumbent upon you to communicate and lead those guys in the locker room. And if you're unable to do it, if you've lost your players, that's on you.
I would be interested, if I were in another organization, of seeing the process play out. And I think 10-6, 10-6, 6-9, I understand the locker room arguments, I do. I think that's worthy of a second chance.
I think that's strong.
Well, listen, I will say this. I appreciate you willing to acknowledge that it'll at least give you cause to pause, per se, because that's the whole point here. It's one thing to look at Chip Kelly's record and say 26-21, 2 winning seasons, even though one of those years he didn't make the playoffs, and then last year's debacle took place. It's another thing to couple all of that with why it happened. And then for him to have another job in 3 weeks is disgraceful.
See, Charlie Strong, I would apply your argument to. I would say Charlie Strong, he is a guy where actually, you know, last stop, it took him a couple
Charlie
seasons.
Strong at Texas, Max.
Yeah.
Everybody don't know that Charlie Strong's at Texas.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah, Texas, sorry.
They need to. I don't know how they let that slip.
Right.
University of Texas.
His track
Guys
record.
just hijacking the block. Keep
Charlie
going.
Strong's track record shows as a head coach, and it takes me a couple years to get the culture the way I want it, and then look, great success. So it's taken him a couple of years, and actually this year, who's to say that they even end below 500, which would be in the right direction.